In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can make a refillable pressure canister for spraying paints and other liquids. Now for this project, you're going to need an empty can of spray paint. Just make sure that the contents of the spray can that you're going to be using is completely empty. Push the button down and hold it and make sure there's no pressure before continuing. Shake it, make sure there's nothing but the mixing ball, and then you're good for the next step. Now the best way to remove the bottom of the can would be to use a Dremel with a cutoff wheel or a fine-tooth hacksaw blade. You can cut very close to this rim and just cut all the way around. Once you remove the bottom, remove the mixing ball because you will no longer be using the mixing ball. Any paint that's put inside this can will be pre-mixed before it's poured into the can. Alright, once the can end has been removed, right there, cut off with the hacksaw nice and clean, and there's the inside. Now take out the mixing ball, there's no need for that. Looks like a marble. Now once I removed the bottom of the can, the next step was to make the can a little shorter to allow the tube to stick down lower. Now the reason why I did that is because of this right here. This right here is a PVC fitting, 2-inch diameter. This side is slip. You put your PVC cement on this side, but we won't be using PVC cement. And on the opposite side, you have a female thread. This is going to be the opening in the bottom of the can where you will pour the material that is going to be sprayed. It also leaves a large enough opening to be able to clean the can thoroughly when you're finished with mineral spirits or water, depending on the material that was used. Now the end gets this flat cap. Once you go to put this on, just put 2 or 3 turns of Teflon tape and then secure that down tightly. Now the reason why I cut the can over here much shorter than it was before it was here, I cut off about 2 1/4 inches, is because the can is going to be sitting inside of the PVC fitting. Now in order to make this can fit tightly into the fitting, what I had to do was take a heat gun like this. You can see it's flared out. That's because I heated it up and got it to the right diameter that I needed. You're going to hold it like this, the heat gun. Don't hold it like this. If you hold it like that, you're going to heat up this part of the fitting and you will deform the threads. So that's a big no-no. You do not want to do that. Hold the gun at an angle. The heat will come out at an angle. You want to aim from this point, the end of that sticking up, to the end. You want to make sure that whole area is heated. You keep rotating and rotating and rotating until when you touch it with your hand, it gets extremely flimsy. Now once it gets extremely flimsy, you're going to put it down and then you're going to get the can and you're going to push it and shape it and move it around until it gets in. And then once you get it in, you push all the way down like that. And that's how I made the base. It's a perfect fit, very snug, and that's what the can looks like. Looks just like that. And you see where the straw is within about 5/8 of the bottom. Once the cap is threaded on, you see there's open areas in here. The liquid will be very close at the very bottom to where the straw is. So you have to make sure you judge when you cut the bottom off exactly where this straw is going to end up. You want it to be around 5/8 of an inch from the bottom. So when you cut the can, make sure you measure for that. Also make sure before you slide this into this fitting, you take a mill file and you go like that and get rid of any rough edge that's sticking out. Leaving a slight rough edge may make it more difficult for you when you go to push it into that softened fitting to make it form the can. If you have a problem using the can to form this fitting, then I suggest you look for something that's almost the same size as this can that you can use to initially get that started once you heat it up. Once it's heated up with the other object, you could pull it out and then insert this one. It'll make it that much easier for you to get that to go in. Now once you know it fits perfectly, the next step, take a piece of sandpaper, thoroughly roughen up the inside edge where it's going to be sealed with the E6000 adhesive. This is extremely durable material, so in order to bond with this, you want to roughen up the surfaces here, take some sandpaper, roughen up the edge of the can where it's going to be bonded with the E6000. Once that's roughened up, take some rubbing alcohol, I use 90%, and just clean the fitting here and clean the outside of the can before you bond it with the E6000. So first, just roughen that up good. Now we're not going to be using a lot of pressure, maybe 30 to 50 psi, so it's not going to be that high. So it's not like we're going to have 100 pounds in here. So it should be just fine up to that 50 psi range. You can see it's uniformly dull. The gloss is gone. Now I'm going to take the rubbing alcohol on this paper towel, rub it in good. Let that dry. The next step, take the can and sand the bottom edge lightly, the last inch. Roughen it up. Once you're done roughening it up, then you're going to clean this as well with the rubbing alcohol. You don't want any oily residue before you bond the can to the PVC fitting. And the scratches also help for a stronger bond. Alright, so that's all scratched up nicely. See all the scratches right there at the end. Now I'm going to clean that with alcohol. This alcohol on the rag. Wipe it really good. Also be careful, you don't want any filings or anything else inside the can. So make sure you blow that out before you put everything together. Once that's dry, I'm going to apply a nice layer of E6000 all over the outside of the can and to the inside of this fitting and assemble the two together. Before you glue it, do a dry fit to make sure it fits good. And that fits extremely snug. Once it's glued, you're also at the very end going to apply a very nice bead of E6000 along this whole rim against the can. It'll dry and add extra strength to the seal between the can and the PVC fitting. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is put a good layer in here. Make sure you cover the whole inside of that. Smear with your finger, put a nice layer on the inside. You can see it's all shiny. Now you want to do the same thing for the can quickly. Good. Smear it on the can as well, a thin layer. That's all it takes. And now push the two together. And that is a great fit. Tap down. And as you can see, the E6000 is already pooled around that rim. Make sure it's firmly seated inside the fitting and allow it to set up for approximately 24 hours. After this has dried for 24 hours, what I will do is show you how to install the valve next. Alright, this is what it looks like looking into the can. I got the sun shining in there so you can see it. You can see the edge where the can meets the PVC. Just make sure you smooth that out nicely with the E6000. all ready to have the valve installed. Over here on the right, there's the cap that I chose to use. There's 3 wraps of Teflon tape around that plug. And I happen to find this piece of metal laying around, which fits perfectly inside that cap, which will make it very easy when I go to tighten the cap and remove the cap. Now to install the valve, you're going to want to position it pretty high up on the can. I would do it around an inch below the top. Just make sure wherever you drill the hole that it's not going to interfere with your hand when you're spraying whatever liquid you're going to be spraying out of this can. So position it in an area that's not going to interfere with your hand. Now the best way to drill the hole is a very clean hole using a unibit like you see here. Once the hole is drilled, slightly smaller than the diameter of this section of the valve stem, right there, that little band you see. You want a nice snug fit. Then you're going to apply a little bit of E6000 inside the wider end of the seal in front of my fingernail, and you're going to reach into the bottom of the can, push it out through the hole in the can until it pops into that section here. Now before you do that, you want to make sure the hole that you made, because the sheet metal is kind of thin, the hole is extremely smooth. You do not want it sharp. So take a grinder and remove any burrs, take some sandpaper and run your finger over it lightly after you do that to make sure it does not feel sharp. Once that's complete, then you can slide the valve inside the tube and out the side with the E6000 coating it. As you can see here, once the valve stem was inserted through the hole in the can and it's sealed, I also slid an E-clip, which you can see right there, over the rest of the valve stem where it seats around the hole. The purpose of that is to compensate for the can being thinner. So by putting the E-clip in the same position, it adds strength to the stem, besides also using the E6000 to seal the stem. The final step to ensure this can easily tolerate up to 50 pounds of pressure inside of it, you're going to have to drill 3 holes roughly 120 degrees apart. So you're going to make sure that these are equally spaced, these 3 holes, and you're going to drill it just slightly larger than the diameter of the bolt. In this case, I used a countersink flat head. Once I drilled the hole through the can using this unibit, I then took a countersink bit, went like that to put the bevel so the head seats nicely inside the plastic fitting. Before you slide the bolt into the hole, you're going to cover the bolt with a little bit of E6000 and then push it into the hole. On the inside, what you're going to do is you're going to take a washer coated in E6000, push it over the bolt, and then you're going to put a little bit of E6000 on the back side of a nut. You're going to reach in with your finger, hold the nut while you tighten it down tightly. Once all 3 bolts are properly sealed and tightened, there will be no chance of this bottom cap being blown off when the can is pressurized. So it's very important to do this. Do not leave that step off, because as strong as the sealant is, under higher pressures, there's always a chance this end could be pushed off. So you want to make sure you definitely have these 3 bolts. Now that the can is all complete, what I'm going to do now is demonstrate by pouring some water inside the can, replacing the end cap, and pressurizing it. Now you don't want to fill this more than about halfway. You want to leave room to pressurize, so do not overfill it. Keep it under a half. Alright, the liquid is now inside the can. Bottom is on tight. Now I'm going to be pressurizing the can. Now I've tested the PVC to see if it gets attacked by oil-based paints and other paints, and I've had no problem with any attack on the paint. But before you put anything inside the can, it's a good idea to take a little piece of PVC that you have laying around and apply some of that paint to it to make sure it does not soften the PVC. If it starts to soften the PVC, just like when you go to solvent weld the PVC together, you're not going to want to put that inside the can. Luckily, most things that I've tried on top of the PVC did not attack it, but there's always a chance that some paints could attack the plastic, so it's always good to check before you pour it inside the can. The E6000 is very resistant to everything. I haven't seen any issues with any of the chemicals attacking E6000. The valve, if you install the one that clamps, those are really good. You'll have no problems with it. This one here should hold up extremely well. Over time, if it begins to dry out, all you would do is slide off the E-clip, push the valve through, and change it out. Take a look. As you can see, nice and dry. What I'm going to do now is pressurize this, show you a reading of around 40 psi, and then I'll start spraying. I'm going to put this up to around 35 or 40 psi, which goes very quickly using this pump. Alright. Let me see what it is right now. 30 is right around here at the bottom. And we're at 40. Alright. See the bottom? Nice and dry. Now I'm going to be using this tip because it comes out in a jet nozzle for spraying penetrants or pesticides. So I'm going to demonstrate right now how well it comes out. Put the cap back on. Take the can right here and spray it in. Just be sure to keep the pressure under 50 psi. I always use around 40 and it works perfectly. If you enjoyed this video, please rate it a thumbs up, subscribe, and post links to this video on other websites and blogs. Also be sure to check out my video playlists as well. Thank you very much for watching.